Hi, and welcome to another episode of Wool Precision's online reloading class. And in this episode, we're going to go over safety, and we're going to talk about what to expect on some of the different subjects and the format of the class, and really just dive into what to expect as we keep going forward and all the things we're going to try to share to get the most from you, your rifle, and now, hopefully, your reloaded ammunition. So when we get into this online reloading class, one of my goals is to try to share with you everything that we can to get the most out of your ammunition. Share with you how we make ammunition here. Now, I know that the internet and forums are just full of experts and people that really have become, I don't want to say like influencers, but that's what they wanted to become. And they're sharing a lot of information that's either read or shared or something that they read that made sense and they believe it's the gospel truth. And you know, one of the things that we constantly battle here constantly, especially in the custom rifle world, is customers calling all the time asking some of the craziest questions when it comes to reloading. Or just to give you an example, you know, trying to bait us out to see and share with them all the horror stories that we can about how hard it is. And you know, my goal is never to become an influencer. I'm a rifle builder. I'm a shooter at heart. I just love the art of marksmanship. My goal is to try to share with our customers and our friends and our families and people we shoot with just really good down-to-earth information to weed through this stuff and get the most, safely from their rifle and their reloading processes. So I want to share with you just a quick story. We had a really great customer here about 2 or 3 years ago at our old shop. And we were doing a build assist with him. He was coming in and building the rifle. And for about an hour, we were going through the build assist. He kept prodding me along, wanting me to share with him how horrible and how hard it is to make hand-loaded ammunition. And, he wanted me to share with him all the super secret squirrel processes that we do. That's just the magic pixie dust that we sprinkle over top of it. And, this went on for like an hour. And then finally, I said to the customer, I'm like, okay, I'm going to share with you something, right? There's nothing magical about it. If I told you that, you're looking for these horror stories of how hard it is to make this ammunition, and you're looking for us to share all these crazy secrets that only we know and that makes us special, you're really talking to the wrong person. So one of two things, either we've got it dialed in right, just doing it by the book, or we're the luckiest hand loaders in the world, because I really don't have any of those stories to share with you. When we develop load processes and we're working towards getting loads found for our rifles, especially in the custom rifle world, we'll go to the range, and I told the customer, I'm like, I'll probably already have a load, at least in my head, worked out within 15, 20, 30 rounds that I'm going to start shooting. And I might go to the range with 3 or 4 different hand loads just to sort of do an initial test, and usually I leave with 2 or 3 or 1 or 2 that look really promising right out of the gate. So I always look at reloading a little bit differently. I am not trying to put 16 or 20 rounds inside the same hole at 100 yards. I am looking to develop a really great load in my load development that allows me to go out and enjoy shooting. Some people get into reloading because they want to be in that world of reloading. In other words, they're sort of diving into it because they want the problems to come along with it, and they want to solve them, and they want to get down this rabbit hole so deep that it's just a horrible experience. And for me, reloading is a necessity. It's not something that I just love to do. And it's something that I have to do because I want to shoot, and I want to shoot well. When I was shooting in competition, I couldn't afford to buy thousands of rounds of factory ammunition. And not only that, but I knew that if I wanted to get the most out of my rifle and my shooting, I had to develop good hand loads. And so what I told him was, if I shared with you how we reload, I think you would sit back and just either not believe us or think that we are the luckiest people in the world because I don't have those problems to share with you. When we started teaching the in-person reloading class, we've had people come through the school here that can have 25 years of reloading experience. And what I try to share with them here and through the 2 days of the actual school is really no secrets. It's basics, it's common sense. It's some things you have to pay attention to that we've learned the hard way that make a difference, but it's not secret squirrel stuff. And we have had bench rest shooters and reloaders with 20 plus years experience come through and leave different reloaders. And their thinking processes and all the secrets that we share, not that they're hidden secrets, they're there in plain sight. It's just a process that we found out that work really, really well for the vast majority of shooters. The other thing I want to share with you when it comes to reloading as well is we have, unlike a lot of your YouTube sensations or, your influencers that you see, we didn't get into this hobby 3 years ago. And we're not seeking sponsorship by 55 different companies to talk about their product reviews on our channel. We're just trying to help reloaders. The flip side of it is I've probably been doing it for about 40 years. I know I look young, but I've been reloading since I was about 12 years old. And I reload for the shooting school. And so where some people reload for their hunting rifle or their match rifle, and they'll reload 800 rounds a year or 1,000 rounds a year, there were years between competition shooting and our long-range shooting school that we would be making 5,000, 7,000, 12,000 rounds of hand-loaded ammunition every year. And so not only do we have the experience and the time that we've been doing it, but we get to see the results by the thousands. When we go to the range and shoot, we're not going and shooting 20, 30, 40 rounds. We could be there with customers shooting 5 of our custom rifles with the same load in each gun, shooting 500 rounds that day. And so what we're able to do is we're able to fast track problem solving. We're able to identify things that either do or do not make a difference quickly. And we're just blessed to be in a situation to where we actually get to see that many rounds go down range, whether we're shooting them or the clients are shooting them. And so I just want to share with you that we're not sharing with you anything to try to make any bold or brash statements. We're not trying to pump ourselves up and say that, we know, more than anybody else. None of that is true. But what I do want to share with you, though, is that we're sharing this with the best intentions, but we also have a lot of experience and a lot of heartache that went along with it. I can share with you many years of just trying to problem solve, how to get the most from the ammunition, how to have this consistent level. And there are times even still today that while we're setting up the reload, I might spend an hour, calibrating some scales. There's just something wonky's happening that I'm not quite sure that it's zeroing out properly, or just little tricks to how do you actually zero multiple scales so that they're all reading the same weight and they're all synced together. And that way when we mix our ammo, we don't have issues. So I want to share with you all that you can expect to see from the class, as well as some of the format that we're going to go over as well. And then I do want to touch base on safety. So first, let's talk about the format of the class and some of the subjects that we're going to try to cover. So right out of the gate, of course, we're going to talk about safety and safety equipment, and we're going to talk a little bit about it today, and we're probably going to talk about it over the next 30 to 40 videos. Safety is a huge priority. We're going to come back to that before we call it quits for today. We're going to talk about all the proper equipment to get started. Things that I want to share with you, whether you're a new reloader or an experienced reloader, trouble people get into when they're choosing the wrong equipment to get started or more advanced equipment than that they're ready for. So I want to share with you, from me personally, Jamie, how I think you can make world-class ammunition without going out and buying, a $1,500 press or $3,000 powder skills. It's not necessary at this level. And I've won and placed in matches with some of the simplest gear and consistently made world-class ammunition at that level and enjoyed the process. So we're going to talk about equipments and tools. We're going to really dive into detail on some of the things that we use as far as the hand tools, measuring tools, how to properly use them, things you're going to want to use. We really dive heavily into just the basic reloading fundamentals, and we always go back to the books, and we're going to talk more about that here in future episodes. But how can you make awesome ammunition very simply and easily? It's sort of amazing. Here at the in-person class, that we'll have students make ammunition twice during their time here, second time on their own under our supervision. And that's usually all it takes, is that second time sort of walking through the process, and they're like, oh, I got this. It's just all the little things we're going to try to share to help them not deal with some of the hidden issues that can happen as you start growing as a shooter and things start to come out, you're not sure what they are. I am going to spend a fair amount of time talking about load and load development and how we approach it, some of the different techniques in which you can evaluate your loads at the range. Some more advanced subjects that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about seating depth and accuracy. We're going to talk about how you find your seating depth for a specific bullet on your rifle. We're going to talk about neck tension and neck sizing, a lot of the do's and don'ts and the different types of equipment that we use, different brass that we use, different dies that we use, and the pros and cons of your selections when you go and start selecting those components for your rifle. We're going to talk about HBN coding and Mullen coding. We're going to talk about standard deviation, what we're looking for, what we try to achieve, how we achieve it, load development and theories. So I'm going to share with you how we develop our loads, but I'm also going to dive into a little bit about how other people might approach it, some of the theories that are out there, try to share with you my experience to weed through the bushes of people that just make reloading crazy and making good working ammunition. We're also going to talk about group analogy and distances. How do you evaluate your group? What's your expectations? What are you using a rifle for? What distances do you shoot? How do we approach it? And we're going to talk about factory and custom. So when we're talking about hand loading ammunition, we're going to share not only how we do it for our custom rifles here, but when you're making your personal ammunition at home for a factory rifle, how we judge good ammunition and what we actually use it for. So we're going to dive into a lot of advanced hand loading and sort of share with you some of the processes that are available out there, some of the things you might bump into and use. We're going to share with you resources as to where to go and find more details on a lot of these things. We try to select components and use processes that eliminate a lot of the advanced hand loading tools. So neck turning would be a good example. It's there, we've done it in the past. I can tell you when you probably want to consider doing it, and I want to tell you how we sort of circumvent around it, because it is a very difficult thing. There's pros and cons to it if you don't do it exactly right. And so we find if we can get out of doing it and have great ammunition without going down that rabbit hole, that's great. But if you're one of those guys that, hey, I've got 3,000 pieces of once fired brass here, so there are things that I can do to clean it up, and there is, and we'll share with you some of the ways to do that, as well as resources to go, reliable resources you can go to and even dive down that rabbit hole a little bit further and get good information. We're going to discuss annealing brass, pros and cons, why we didn't do it for the longest time and why we do it now and how, and dive into the safety aspects of that. Advanced hand loading tools. So we're going to talk a lot about some of the different things that you'll see out there, tools, what we use, what's out there, how we use it, and what you may want to consider as both a new reloader as well as maybe an advanced reloader. And then I want to share with you lots of helpful field tips. So my goal isn't to make this complicated. I really do believe that as a brand new shooter, if you just simply follow great instructions, if you just take your time to go through the processes that we're going to lay out here, and more importantly for me, go by the book. Make sure you have a process laid out. Make sure you understand the process you're doing. In a very simple setup, you can make world-class ammunition that will just stun you personally and probably beat anything that you can buy off the shelf. And you can do that with very little experience and with minimal gear. So not real gear laden or gear heavy that you got to go out and spend $5,000 or $7,000 on reloading supplies just to get started. So I'm always cautious that I don't want you to have to go out and break the bank to get into reloading. I don't believe you have to. And I'll share with you, some of the things if you want to upgrade to consider, and some of the things that we still use here today, and our reloading processes on how we still make thousands and thousands of rounds hand loaded one at a time for our shooting school every year. The last thing before we get into our next subject, talking about safety, and really diving down that rabbit hole a lot, is I just want to touch base on my thought process behind this. So safety, when you're dealing with making your own ammunition, is just super important. You have to take the time and you have to know yourself well enough to know whether or not this is something that you should be doing. In other words, is this a good idea, right? There are some people that just don't have the attention span. There are some people that just don't have the attention to detail. There are people whose lives are just too busy and they're constantly being distracted and pulled away, and their brain is at work while they're sitting at their reloading bench and trying to make ammunition. I always say that you need to think about this stuff before you get into reloading, and think about your level of commitment to making not just good ammunition, but more importantly, safe ammunition. You're going to be shooting this, but I always remind people that there are going to be people shooting beside you. left and right. I always remind people here at the shooting school, especially when people start talking about bringing hand-loaded ammunition, that it's usually not the person that pulled the trigger on their hand loads that get hurt when things go badly. It can be the person sitting to your left or right that you do not know. I've been to matches where I've seen kids sitting beside other shooters. So think about a 13 or 14-year-old just getting into shooting, sitting on that next bench over, and you think it's a good idea to run super hot loads, or you think that that brass is still safe to shoot, or while you were making that ammunition, you weren't taking the time to do the safety checks necessary to make sure that that ammunition is safe to use, and you blow a gun up. You blow a gun up, you get hurt, the person beside you gets killed, right? So I always remind people that you can make world-class ammunition. My daughter, when she was 12 and 13, and even younger than that, was making ammunition with me. I'll share with you some stories as we move along here, that even at 8 or 9 years old, I could sit with her and we could make ammunition, for a couple hours. And it's not rocket science. Well, I guess maybe it is a little bit, but the point being is it's just, as long as you have procedures in place and checks in place, and safety is always the top priority, then I think you're going to find that this is not just a satisfying sport to get into, but the reloading part of it can be very satisfying as well. It's a lot of fun to make your own ammunition and go to the range and do well with it. And because people always want to have a little bragging, right? I said, hey, what are you shooting? Well, they're my hand loads, right? There's some pleasure in that, and knowing that you took a part or had a hand in developing that specifically for your rifle. That to me is a lot of fun. But I always remind people, know yourself before you get into this. Really decide whether or not you should be doing this, if this is a good idea. Commit that you're going to take the time to do it right, that you're going to eliminate distractions, and that your number one goal is to make safe, reliable ammunition. And if you decide that none of these things you can say, if you decide that, hey, maybe I am just a little bit too, I don't want to say bubble-headed, but maybe I just got too much going on in my life right now. Maybe, with work and all the other distractions, I can't get 10 minutes of peace to do anything. Then maybe at that point in your life, you should be shooting factory ammunition. Remember, safety always first, you and those shooting around you. So we're going to dive into a lot of this going forward with a lot of video work. And it's going to take us quite a while because we are going to explain in detail some of the different things that we do use, some of the different processes that we go through. But again, I want to share with you the safety part of it, and just take this part for what it's worth and make that decision wisely. Whether you're going to start down this path making hand loads, or whether or not you should pass on it at this time and maybe pick it up when life slows down a little bit more for you. So we're looking forward to having you on board. If this is your cup of tea and you would like to start down this journey, we're really excited to have you. We're going to be posting up videos as often as we can. We still build custom rifles here. We still have shooting schools. So every once in a while there will be a week where you won't see a video come up. But our goal is through summer, and by the end of summer is to have most of this complete for you to enjoy and for you to learn and grow and hopefully become a great hand loader. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. See you in the next class.